If you've ever thought, who cares what I have to say as a podcaster, this episode is going to change how you think about your voice, your message, and your purpose as a podcaster. Today, I'm sitting down with the host of Meet Me at the Spot, Holly Eckelberge, who is a sexual educator, curriculum designer, and reproductive justice advocate. Her podcast is all about sex education and reproductive justice, which is such an important topic. I've never had anyone on the show talk about anything quite like this, so I just feel so excited to have this shared with you guys so you can see all of the different types of podcasts that are out there and what really is possible. So, whether you're a podcaster, an advocate, or just someone craving deeper conversations like this episode is a reminder that your voice matters and community can change everything. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe, where we're serving up everything you need to know about podcasting, from tips, stories, and strategies for podcasters from podcasters. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency helping business owners, creatives, and thought leaders launch and grow their shows. Whether you're just starting out or want to take your podcast to the next level, this is the place for you. Each week, we'll dive into practical tips, actionable strategies, and of course, stories from other podcasters so that you can build up a podcast that you love and that works for your business. So, grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe. Hey Holly, welcome into the Podcast Cafe. I am so excited to be talking with you here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yes, I'm so excited too. So before we get into all things your podcast, Meet Me at the Spot, which I love the name and the listeners are about to learn all about it, I want to hear, what is your go-to coffee order?
Oh, I'm drinking it right now.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to hear.
So I'm an iced coffee year-round kind of girly, even in the dead of winter, iced coffee. And so I usually get an iced latte with almond milk and some kind of flavoring, usually mocha, but like holiday time, I like to change it up, do a little peppermint mocha. Sometimes if the coffee shop has a different kind of flavor, I'll give it a go. So
Delish. I stopped off at a coffee shop this morning to get the hazelnut latte. It was like $9 and it is not good. So that's how today is going. But
that's like the worst way to start a day. Honestly, to me, if you have bad coffee, especially bad coffee you paid a lot for,
yeah,
that's the tone.
I know. I was like, what the heck? I've never been to this coffee shop before, but noted. I need to start doing like coffee shop reviews on this show.
Yes. Oh, fun.
So we're here to talk all about Meet Me at the Spot, your podcast all about sex education. So you're a sexual educator, curriculum designer, and reproductive justice advocate with over 15 years of experience. Tell us about when you decided to actually start the podcast and who is it for?
Yeah, so I have always wanted to do a podcast for a really long time. I let myself get in my own way, I'll be honest with you. And I'm like, I don't have time for a podcast. I don't know what I'm doing. Just even start a podcast. Who cares what I have to say? There's already people talking about this, right? And I had a TikTok. I do currently still have a TikTok channel. And I was talking about sexual health a lot on my TikTok channel. But 3-minute videos, it's really hard to get across a lot of great stuff in 3 minutes. And I am an elder millennial on TikTok, so I am not doing the fun dances. I am very late to any trend because I have to watch so many other creators do it before I feel confident enough to do it myself. And it's always going to be cringy, right? Because I'm 39 years old on TikTok and it's always going to look cringe. And I recognize that. So I was kind of getting frustrated and feeling like I couldn't talk about things the way I wanted to. And one day I just said, you know what? I'm doing this. I'm doing this podcast thing. That ADHD kicked in and was like, we're going to focus all of our energy here. And so I started to kind of dive in a little bit, learn a little bit about podcasting, platforms and how to get your podcast even started. I didn't have any fancy equipment. I still don't have any fancy equipment. everyone's like, "What's your setup like? I would love to see a picture of your setup." And I'm like, I have my laptop propped up on a pillow while I'm sitting in my bed, you guys. So that is my
Love
setup.
it. Love it.
So the end. And so, yeah, so I decided I wanted to start my podcast. I wanted to talk about reproductive justice issues. And I just decided one day I'm gonna go for it. And yeah, and now I've been doing this for 2.5 years now.
Yeah,
And I absolutely love the way it has shifted and turned and moved in the 2.5 years, and just the amazing connections you make in the podcasting world, as I'm sure you know. You get to meet the coolest
absolutely.
people.
The coolest with the coolest stories. And what I love most is I get to be nosy and get to
Yeah.
hear about the stuff that other people don't ask because it's not necessarily like, you know, stuff you would typically ask. But
Yeah.
no, so I mean, sex education is such a big topic and reproductive rights. I'm really interested to hear, with all these different pieces that you talk about and have talked about in the past, how did you come to the podcast and decide who your ideal listener was?
Yeah. So really, in my mind, in the beginning especially, my ideal audience was anyone who would listen. And
Mm,
so so it was like anyone who really saw value in reproductive health, in reproductive justice, in reproductive rights, and especially in the United States, because we could talk about globally, but that would be way out of my own expertise.
right.
So, in talking about specifically around the United States and really what's going on, and people who are just really passionate about that and just needed to feel that like connection, needed to feel like what they were feeling wasn't wrong or invalid, or like they were just making things up and or making things worse in their head than it really was, that there was a sense of community there. And as I've kind of shifted and really when I started moving into an interview format instead of me just talking all episode and really moving into interviewing guests, the ideal listener is, again, it's really now focused on that building community piece, that we are louder when we're together. And when we're louder, that's when change happens. And so, getting feedback from folks like, I've been looking for podcasts to really understand more about the different facets of reproductive justice and reproductive health in a fun way, in a way that's not like we're going to talk about how we're not really, we are, but we aren't directly talking about like how crappy things are right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also talking about it in an uplifting way. And I'm a very like solutions oriented person. So like, what can we do? What are some things that folks have in mind? Like, how can we make things better? How can we envision a world where reproductive justice really is equitable for everybody, not just for certain people?
Yeah. And I mean, that is a really tough thing to do sometimes, especially when these news stories come out or these policies pass. But keeping it solutions oriented, how do you do that? With every episode, are you giving tips on things that we can do?
Yeah. So I really, thing something that I started asking my guests a while ago is I end all of my podcasts with my guests giving one piece of advice for the listeners. And that has turned into one of my absolutely favorite parts of the episode. Not the favorite because it's the end of the episode, because that
Hmm.
always makes me super sad, but it's my favorite in that every single person that I talk to, regardless of what topic they're on, has such uplifting advice for the listeners to just take with them. If you take nothing else from this conversation, take this piece of information from things like, don't be so hard on yourself, communicate with partners, open up that communication more, love yourself and have respect for yourself. I had one guest talk about like, we check in with consent with our partners, but did you ever like check in and check in consent with yourself? And I'm like, wait, what? Yes.
Mm.
It's always so amazing to hear like that uplifting advice, and sharing a lot of resources and things like that. And, on my Instagram page, I share a lot of of ways to get involved in things, calls to action, how to like reach out to your elected officials, how to get involved in grassroots organizations. And certainly I don't create all of those posts myself and recognize that there are people already doing this amazing work. How can I use my platform to uplift what folks are sharing too? So yeah, I've really, taken time to learn a lot about what's already happening, what people are already doing, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need, everybody to have to learn how to go out and find these things and then create social media posts. Like, no, someone is doing that.
Mhm.
How can I uplift that, right? How can I share that message and uplift it and encourage others to share and uplift it as well?
Absolutely. And I mean, with your background in education, before we press record, we were talking about how you used to be regulated by the grants you were getting on what you can talk about. And women's reproductive rights is not something you could talk about without getting political. That was like your last episode. It was like, let's get political or something along those lines because you have to. And is that something that you expected when you started the podcast?
Yeah, yeah, I really wanted to get more political and find an outlet for that outside of my 9 to 5 job at the time when I started
Hmm.
my podcast. And so, a lot of my earlier episodes where it's just me talking for 30, 40 minutes, it really is rooted on what is going on politically. And I would start my episodes with some current events, like here's what's kind of going on in the world of reproductive justice. The really hard part now, and I haven't done that lately, it's something I talked about in an episode, is not that I don't want to or I don't think it's important. It's because I'm at a point now where I'm like batch recording episodes and batch editing, and I could edit and do everything and get ready for a podcast like the night before I release it. And so much could happen that current event is not even
Hmm.
relevant anymore. So I stopped including it there and focus more on up to date in the moment updates on my Instagram and also the threads and sharing some stuff on my TikTok channel as well as it's applicable, so that it is in real time. People are not waiting till Wednesday at 10 a.m. when my podcast gets released to hear what's kind of going on. But yeah, it was always the goal for me to talk about politics, to talk about political events going on, because that, like you said, that is reproductive health. It is political, it's inherently political, and policies are getting, passed every single day to try and restrict the rights of so many people in this country.
Yeah. I think, I don't know where in New York you are, but here in Seattle, it's, like we're protected here, but the
Mhm.
states around us aren't. Like Idaho, I have cousins in Idaho. I
Yep.
mean, it's just so interesting to me how when I leave this like bubble that I live in, that's really where I see like these things are happening, right?
Mhm.
So when you're looking for guests, do you find people all over the country who have these different views?
Yeah, absolutely. I am very, very, very particular about the guests that I have on. I don't have like an open, like, I kind of do, but I don't really advertise like apply to be a guest on
Yeah.
the podcast. That's how I started out because I didn't really know a lot of folks and I didn't really feel confident in myself as a podcaster yet to reach out to folks and say, "Do you want to be on my podcast? You'd be really cool." And in fact, that's how I met someone who had been listening to my podcast. I never met him before. We never spoke to each other. And now I consider him like one of my really, really great friends. And he was a guest on the podcast talking about being a gay man in the South, in like rural
Mm.
Tennessee and his experiences. And it was still one of my favorite episodes and a fan favorite. I think it's still one of the ones with the highest, like, downloads, and
Yeah.
so and he's just a wonderful human being, but I'm very particular about my guests, but I've had guests from all over the country and all over parts of the US, but I've also talked to folks in Canada, in England, France, like, all over the world, really, and it's always fascinating to hear about some different experiences going on around the world. And it's also sometimes disheartening to know that and this isn't just exclusive to the United States, right? Things are really bad here and things are really bad globally, right now, which is disheartening, but it has that feeling like, okay, it's not just us, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And this is a collective issue we have and a collective uprising that can come from this and a shift in the way that we're doing things.
Yeah. Where do you see that shift happening? I mean, I love to travel and I met someone in Brazil and she was telling me how, what happens in the US is a ripple effect. Like
Mhm.
they're a smaller country and, you know, behind the times of what our policies are like, they're just different, right?
Mhm.
And when we lost Roe v. Wade, when that went away, that was like a really big thing for them too, because they were like, all right, this is never going to happen in our country now. How do you not feel? I mean, there's so many topics you can talk about. How do you not get depressed over it and, stay in the lane of, we can all make a change. I love what you said of,
Mhm.
together we're louder,
Yeah.
but that would make me feel a lot of responsibility.
Yep. Um,
You're like, yes, yep.
yes. Next question. No, yes. And I'm talking about all of these issues, you know, coming from a very privileged viewpoint, right? I am a middle class white woman living in New York State. I have a lot of protections here. I have a lot of access to resources. I'm full-time employed. I have health insurance. I have the knowledge and the skills and the ability to get resources that I need. And so I recognize that in talking about this. And I try to sound very upbeat and positive about things because this isn't the first time we've been here, right? And so these kind of restrictions on rights have happened all throughout history, and people have persevered and have fought, and we have the blueprint for how we make the changes. Um, do I sit here and cry at how awful this is for people? Yeah, all the time. I I spend most of my day teetering back and forth between being so angry and just like, we just have to burn it to the ground and start over. Feeling really depressed, like, I'm just one little person. There's no way I
Hmm.
can make a change. I can't make a difference. But I'm not just one person doing this, right? I am so fortunate. 9 years ago, I helped co found and I currently co direct a local sexual and reproductive justice collective here in my city. And we do the dang thing. Like we just did a queer history trivia night last night. And it was so big, there wasn't enough space in the venue. We had to do some people outside and some people inside because
Wow.
that's just how many people came out. And so these kinds of things remind me that I'm not alone in this, that there are
Hmm.
people who really care about this. And I'm fortunate to have some absolutely incredible human beings that are close to my life that I can vent to, that I know I can text and be like, "Girl, can we just go collectively scream into the void somewhere because what?" And so, having those people that you can vent to and that then we can say, "Okay, so what are we going to do about this? What is within our locus of control right now? What can we do to make it better?" And that's where really change starts to happen, right? Especially with reproductive and sexual health. There's, like you said, there's so many parts to this, right? We're talking about LGBTQ plus health. We're talking about, sex education in schools, but we're also talking about climate justice, right? Because as these big climate movements are happening, we're going to see a lot of climate refugees. And so when people have to move from their home regardless of how long that movement is, it disrupts their access to reproductive health care, right? So if you're having to be displaced because of wildfires, tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, where are you going to get access to your birth control? If you're pregnant, how are you getting prenatal care? What happens, if you're taking medication for an STI, where's the closest pharmacy? You have to learn all these things, right? We're also talking about like, criminal justice. People have the right to raise their kids in a safe and healthy environment. Well, if you're afraid every time your kid leaves the house that they are going to be arrested or, abducted by ICE. Like,
Mhm.
that's not safe. That's not reproductive justice. That creates a lot of stress and tension, and that also can impact your ability to have kids in the future too, right? And so a lot of these things play into reproductive justice, and there's so much to focus on. But really finding like what's that thing? What's that one aspect that you think is important? And then finding people who are like, I also think reproductive justice is important, but I think this part is the most important. And then you start to all connect with each other, and you all start working on your little thing, and that those little, like, staying in your little lane creates big change. When a lot of people are staying within their own little lane together, side by side, and seeing how they're all connected, that's where we start to see these big changes happen.
Absolutely. I mean, these are all so important, and the people that you're talking to are teaching such important things and having such important conversations. How are you getting the word out about the podcast? Is it the community aspect? Is it word of mouth?
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of word of mouth. I had to recognize early on, not be offended that my target audience is not my family and friends. My spouse does not listen to my podcast. And at first I was like, hell, I was so offended that
Yeah.
nobody in my personal life really gave two craps about my podcast. But it's because they're not my target audience, because they listen to me yap all day long about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so because they're not listening to it, while they're in the car or while they're like going for a walk or something, right? They are listening to me talk about these things. Um, and so I really am, as I always say, I'm the worst salesperson for myself and getting myself out there. But I've been trying to really just kind of put myself out there to connect with folks when I see a podcast post like, who wants to come on my podcast, And I'm
That's how
like,
we connected.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
how we connected. And so I've been really trying to get my name out there in some of these little more organic ways, and just really uh talking about it wherever I humanly possibly can. But I also know that I am surrounded by a lot of people who speak my name and speak my podcast name in spaces when I'm not there. And so I'll have a lot of folks, especially like past podcast guests, who will send me stuff and be like, you should apply for this, or you should do this, or you should connect with this person. I'm actually going to be a guest on another podcast because a mutual friend of ours who is a podcaster as well, we were both on her TikTok live at the same time, and she was like, "You
Mm,
guys should connect." And so we did, and we just like absolutely had an amazing connection. So we're going to do a podcast swap with each other. And so
amazing.
like, yeah, just like those little things, you just never know, like the people you meet in this, talking about who you are and what you do and what you're passionate about. You don't know the people that they know. So like this ripple effect that, similar to what you were talking about, right? This ripple effect happens even when you don't know what's happening. So that's been probably one of the coolest, is having people like recognize where they might not be the right fit, but I might be the right fit. And
Yeah.
that kind of connection, that kind of trust, and that relationship building is key to this whole movement.
Yeah. What's the demographic of your podcast listeners?
Yeah, women.
That's what
A
I was
lot
gonna
a lot of
guess.
women.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
women, and I try to really diversify my guests and not have all women. I'm in season 3, I'm wrapping up season 3 right now, and season 3 unintentionally became the season of trans men, and I had 3, 4 trans men
Okay.
as guests, and it was so amazing to hear such a unique perspective that often doesn't get highlighted, and to hear from men in general. I think their perspective is so different in this space and in this work. And it's always been really fascinating to me. But yeah, my demographic for listeners tends to be women. That 25 to 40 range tends to be it, mostly in the US, but again, little pockets of folks, especially since I've done some interviews with guests internationally. You'll see
Mhm.
pockets from those places, Canada, the UK, France, but mostly in the US, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was wondering if it was more, I was assuming more women than men, but
Mhm.
these topics, affect men too, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the men complain about the men's loneliness epidemic, and I'm like, okay, well, what are you doing to make women be interested
Stop
in
being a terrible man. Stop being a
stop
terrible
being a
human
terrible
being.
man? Yes,
Just stop being a terrible
exactly.
human being. And you know, there's a whole subset of folks who really want to take this country back to a place where men dominated over women, where
Hmm.
men controlled women and what they did and how they moved. And for the most part, women are, giving the middle finger to that, saying, "No, sweetie,
Yeah.
we're not going to do that." And we've worked so hard for a sense of independence, which isn't something we've had for very long, right? Like the ability to have our own credit cards, the ability to vote, the ability to own homes in our own names, these kinds of things, to own companies. And now with a surge, I think really with the COVID lockdowns, with a lot of women especially taking on this role where they had to be at home with their kids or taking care of other people in their family while simultaneously working, really set the movement, I think, for a lot of women, myself included, to say, I can do all of the things I want to do. And how do these things kind of intersect with each other?
Hmm.
Um, and how do I take all of these pieces of me and make them work as one person? Because, my identity as a mom is rooted in reproductive justice. I have a 4-year-old. We talk about sexual health at an age appropriate level, right? We talk about consent and around boundaries, right? About personal touch. Those, I've been talking to her about consent since I've been changing her diaper, right? We've been talking about body parts. When my kiddo is taking a bath, she washes her body and we go through all the parts. And we say vulva and butt in the same way I would say, okay, wash
Hmm.
your arms, time to wash your chest and your belly. And she's talking about her pimples, her nipples. She calls them her pimples.
That's
It's
funny.
adorable. But we talk about these things. They're just your body parts, right? And talking about these are words, these are body parts. There's no shame. You have a vulva, there's no shame around that. And then how do those conversations kind of grow as she's getting older, right? If we're talking about your body parts are amazing, as she starts to get older, it's like, okay, your body parts are amazing, but there are times and places where we talk about our body parts, right? Like dance class with your other 3 and 4-year-old friends is not not
That's
the
so funny.
right time. Try to convince your classmates that you have a penis, which you don't, but you just think the word penis is funny, which it is.
Right,
So,
right.
so how do we start to have these conversations, right? Keep your hands to yourself. Some people don't like to be hugged. Some people don't want to be, hold their hand. You're a very loving kid and you love to give hugs and stuff like that, but not every kid is like that. So if
Hmm.
someone says no, then you respect their boundaries. And same thing
Yeah.
in the reverse end, right? If you don't want someone to hug you, you say, "No, thank you." And you assert your boundaries in that way. But all of those kind of, identities for me are one and the same.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I appreciate you being the one to talk about this and educate on this. And I mean, I'm just so glad we're having this conversation. And I'm glad someone out there is, having a podcast about this. And outside of the podcast, like you have a business. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So I own a business called That Sex Educator, which is also my TikTok handle. I really wanted to create a space for folks to have access to resources and knowledge. One of the things I'm working on building right now is a place for educational workshops. So, for folks who work in grant funded jobs where they're restricted in what they can and can't talk about, for folks who are like, I'm really passionate and knowledgeable about this topic, but I don't have, all the fancy letters after my name and stuff like that. And it's not really part of my job. Having a space to host workshops where people can create their own pre recorded workshops that are available for the public is something that I'm currently working on building right now. I've got a couple folks who are in the process of getting things started. I'm going to be throwing some of my own up there as well. but certainly open invitation for folks who are interested in talking about topics that are important for folks as we see more and more restrictions on our education, not only for young people, but for adults as well, like what you can and can't find on the internet. The CDC and the NIH removing so much information from their websites. This is an opportunity to do so. And it's also a really great opportunity for folks who are like, I have so much information. I have zero time, energy, or knowledge about how to do the back end of things. I don't know where to put these things. Great. I have a website. I pay for it every year. Like, I'll host it for
Mhm.
you. And so, really building that community. And that really came from me going, I'm going to have all these workshops up available on my website that people can access. And then I thought, I'm not the only voice in this movement. Take a step back, Hall. You are blessed and fortunate to know so many cool people. And so opening up the door for folks to really put their own knowledge out there and to create more of a community. That's really just always my goal is finding ways to create community always.
Mhm. Yeah. How can people support the work you do?
Yeah, pay me money. No, just kidding.
Right?
I always tell people like I do this work for free. And right now I'm very fortunate. I have a full-time job. So this isn't my only thing I do and I'm just making $0. I have a full-time job, so I'm very fortunate. So on my website, I do have, items for sale. I make a bunch of stickers. I've made some t-shirt designs. I've literally taken quotes from that have happened in podcast episodes. So there's a really great quote that happened from my 100th live episode that I had with a few of my past guests. I made it. Someone said like, we should make that into a sticker or a shirt. And I'm like, yes, we are. And so, we checked in with the person who said it and they were like, oh my gosh, absolutely. So those are on there. If someone wants something custom made, I'm more than happy to do that as well. And I also sell 3D printed reproductive models
Mm.
as well on my website. And so, really fortunate to make those available for folks who do this work or want to do more of this work in the education space and making them affordable because they're really expensive to buy online. And that's kind of where that came from because I was looking for some for my own educational purposes. And I was like, these are expensive. These are, you know, thousands of dollars sometimes to get them. And then I remembered I have a brother-in-law who's amazing, who has a 3D printer. And so I
Amazing.
reached out to him and I was like, "Hey, let's collab. What do you think about this?" So he printed me like a mock-up model basically, and I was like, "This is what I wanna sell on my
Mhm.
website." And so I have community agencies who reach out and they're like, "We want this for our, like, community sex educators to go out." They can be
Oh,
totally
cool.
customized to, like, if your company or organization has specific, like, branding colors, we can work within that. Schools and stuff that have, their school colors, and you want to incorporate that into the models as well. We could absolutely do that too. And just always finding new ways to try to find things that people want, people need, all that good stuff.
That's amazing. And I know you mentioned you have resources on your website for people
Mhm.
to learn more too. Do you mention those in your podcast episodes as well?
Yes, ish. Not as
Okay.
much. Not as much. I have a whole resource page and it's broken down into a variety of different topics. So
Mhm.
around LGBTQ issues, specifically, I have a whole trans health section, stuff around intimate partner violence. And I have a whole like political like involvement or activism 101 guide that I kind of created
Mhm.
for folks because a lot of people are getting really politically involved maybe for the first time ever in their lives. And recognizing I'm not the expert in political activism work, but
Right.
I've done a lot of activism work. And so I want to give folks a place to start and a place to kind of come from in the beginning. Um, so that they're not feeling like they have to just know everything because
Mhm.
you're never going to know everything. That's not the goal. So don't try to make it the goal. Just be a lifelong learner. And that's really where it's at. One of the
Yes.
things I do have on my website is, safety is my number one concern. So around a lot of the pages, when you open up a page, there'll be like a little warning on how you can quickly get out of that page should somebody come by and you don't want them to know you're looking up resources around specific topics. You're trying to
Hmm.
keep your safety and privacy in check. So a little box comes up to let you know, like, how you can quickly
Oh,
get
that's
out of there and
awesome.
get back to, like, a homepage, for example.
Yeah. Very, very cool. I love that you have those resources. I'll definitely put them in the show notes. I'm curious, has your podcast ever started arguments? Like, have people started arguments with you over the topics?
Not yet.
Okay, good. I was hoping no, but I was
No.
just, with any topic like that, like, I don't know, there's a lot of
Yeah.
stigma that goes into sexual health and education. And like, I went to a Catholic school and I
Yes.
never got education ever, right?
Mm,
So,
me
like,
neither.
yeah, and so I don't know. And I'm sure my parents would have been fine if I did, but I know other
Mhm.
parents are not so much. But I know,
Yeah.
it's just so crazy.
So crazy. Yeah, I haven't had any arguments, but I will say, there was an episode that I did that really sparked an entire conversation within my family. So my sister had told me she wanted to be a guest on the podcast, and I was like, "Oh." My sister's kinda quiet, she's the more reserved one, and I was like,
Okay.
"Okay, what do you wanna talk about?" She's like, "I'm not gonna tell you what I wanna talk about. It's gonna be a surprise when the episode happens." So, of course, my anxiety was like, "What could it
Hi.
be?" Yeah, I was like,
Right.
"I have no idea." And I was like, "Do you have an idea for maybe a title that I can kinda think about?" It's
Like
like, "No, because
ask
if
you
I
for
told
anything.
you, like, then you would
Okay,
know
yeah.
what it is." So, we got on, we started recording, and I could feel my heart, like, in my throat. I was like,
Is
"I
this
don't know
live
what's"
or is it pre-recorded?
pre-recorded, thank
Okay,
gosh,
okay.
because I was in shock. And in no way, shape, or form did I think my sister was gonna disclose that she had an abortion, and she never told us before.
Wow.
And I was like, "I'm sorry. I think I blacked out. What did you just say?" And
Uh-huh.
so I had to collect myself. Thank goodness it was pre-recorded so I could go back and edit myself going, "Wait, wait, wait, hold on, wait, what? Hold on. Hang
Yeah.
on." So
Wow.
I was so honored that she shared
Yeah.
that. I'm getting choked up always when I talk about this because it's such an honor that she not only shared that with me, but that she shared that with the world, right? With anyone who has access to podcasts and could listen to it. But it was a discussion that we had to have like before this episode comes out. You need to talk to mom about this. You need to really talk to mom and you need to talk to your younger sister. Like we need to have this kind of conversation because I would never want to find out something about my sister like that from a podcast, and I would never want, my mom to hear about that because my mom knew them that my sister wanted to be on the podcast. So I was like, I don't want her to hear it, and that's how she finds out about it. So,
Yeah.
opened up some big
Wow.
conversations within our family, and, you know, it broke my heart that she felt like she couldn't tell us at the time, but I also, like, respected why she felt she couldn't, and respected the fact that she wanted to share because she didn't want other people to feel like they couldn't talk
Yeah.
about it either. Uh,
Wow.
and so it was one of the most powerful moments on the podcast, and it really, like, shifted a lot of conversations in my family, so it was really cool. It was really, really cool.
That is really cool. That's beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
you created a resource for other people, but it helped your own family too, which
Yeah. It was
that's
wild.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's powerful, and you're like,
Yeah.
"This is why I do this podcast," right? Like, "This is
Yeah.
why I do this." I wanna create space for folks to learn, but also, again, like I said in the beginning, to just not feel so alone in this
Hmm.
world, that there are so many people out there who may be going through something similar as you, who maybe understands a little bit about what you're going through, and that you're not alone in that, find that community, even if you just need to reach out to me and say, "I don't know where my people are." I can help try to find at least a direction for you.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to do that. The community building is number 1 to me. It's right
Yeah.
now we need that more than anything.
I agree 100%. Holly, I could talk to you forever and ever, but I have
Aw.
some rapid fire questions for
Yeah.
you that I want to get into.
All right.
So, I'm pretty slow at these because I'm a yapper, but
No,
we're
you're
going to
okay.
get through it. So, what is the first podcast you ever listened to?
Oh my gosh.
Or like remember listening to? Like, what's the first one that left an impact on you?
I think the first podcast I listened to was probably like a podcast version of like a radio show, so not that
Okay.
exciting. Um, and I can't even remember. It's probably like Elvis Duran in the morning in New York City. It's
Okay.
pretty dope. And so I think that was like probably the first time I like started listening to podcasts.
Nice. I love
Yeah.
that. What are some podcasts you recommend everyone listen to besides your own, of course?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say there's this great one I know called Meet Me at the Spot. I have to look because I'm really bad at everybody's titles of their podcast.
Yeah, no
Um,
worries.
and so a few that I really, 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 really love. Um, Why Won't You Date Me? Nicole Byer. First of all, Nicole Byer is probably one of the funniest comedians ever. She's hilarious. That is one of my very much go-to. Lovers by Shan. She's just an icon to me in the sexual reproductive health world. The way she talks about stuff is just golden. It's magical. So magical. And one of the podcasts that I'm going to be going on pretty soon is the I Do podcast. They are just the cutest couple of all time, and I'm obsessed with them. I love to listen to the topics they talk about. They're just a delight. Just an absolute delight to talk to you about that. A lot of the podcasts that I like started listening to and really started formulating my like want to become a podcaster. They're not really hosting their show anymore, but like Inner Ho Uprising, they still have their show up. That
The name
is
is so good.
yes, and that lives up to its name. I'm so
Okay.
sad that they don't do episodes anymore because that was
Yeah.
one of my go-to listen
Mm.
podcasts when I first started listening. But yeah, those are my go-tos.
Okay. I love those. I've never listened to any of those, so I'm going to put
Yeah.
them in the show notes. I'm going to check them out. So, my next question is, besides your own genre, what
Mhm.
is your favorite genre to listen to?
Okay. Don't judge me, but
I would
I
never.
I love I love, love, love listening to when radio stations, and I listen just to this part of their podcast from
Hmm.
different radio stations across the country. When they do like the War of the Roses where they try to catch the partners cheating. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And I get so angry when the partner doesn't cheat. It's so
My God. So
when they're
funny.
like, I want to send them to my beautiful girlfriend, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, next. Oh my God, I don't care.
You're
Bear
like, I'm here for the tea. Where's the
that.
tea? That
Come
is so funny.
on. Come on.
I love that. Wait, that's such a good answer. I love that so much.
Uh,
Okay. What advice would you like to leave podcasters with?
yeah. My advice is to find your people, whether that's your people that when things are heavy, when things are really rough, they're the people you can text and they're not going to make you feel bad or judge you. They're just going to let you feel your feels and support you and find ways to get you connected. Just find your people. And that can be in real life. That can also be on the internet. As a podcaster, as a content creator, I have found so many incredibly amazing people that I call dear friends of mine that I know I can send them the weirdest memes in the middle of the night and they're going to think they're hilarious. Like we're going to have that connection
Hmm.
with each other. And in building that community, know that it's going to shift over time. The people you've been in community with, you may not be, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing, in my opinion. It just means your priorities and your vision is shifting. And that think about today that one thing that kind of scares you that you've always wanted to do, but you're just kind of holding your own self back from it. Go do that thing. Go do it.
Mm.
Give yourself permission to fail, to not be perfect at it. I've been podcasting for 2.5 years. I'm not perfect at it. And that's okay. I'm always learning. I'm always trying to be a better podcaster and a better content creator. But just try it. Just go do it. Just step out of that comfort zone for a little bit and just do it. And if you ever need a hype girl, hit me up on Instagram and just be like, I need some motivation. I just need someone to tell me that I am a badass and I'm your girl. I got you.
Mm.
I
I
got
love
your back.
that. I love that. I'm here too. Like, we
Yeah.
can both hype you up for sure.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite things to do.
Yes.
Holly, I have loved this conversation. I just have one more question for you, and it is, what is the most surprising thing that podcasting has taught you about yourself?
My voice is valuable, that my voice is needed in this space. There could be 800 sexual health podcasts, and there might be, but none of them are me. None of them are Holly, and none of them are coming from my experiences and from my viewpoint and from my kind of mindset. And that I'm an introvert at heart.
Okay.
And so stepping out to ask people to be a guest on my podcast is so vulnerable. And then I had to realize the worst thing someone could ever say to me is no. And I've only had one person say no, and her loss.
Her loss, yep.
I'm lost. I've had people not respond at all, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Rejection is okay. And that's been something I've really had to learn about myself, that rejection is okay. I'm going to ask big content creators who are verified, who have tens of hundreds of thousands of followers. And sometimes those people say yes. And that is really cool because that is tapping into a whole different audience, and vice versa, because I think of it as a mutual relationship where their audience is tapping into me, but my audience is also tapping into them. And so we're building this connection here. And then I'm building this connection with the next guest and the next guest. And we're all just kind of building together. I'm telling you, that community thing is really my jam. It's really my vibe.
Yeah, no, it's so important, especially in a space that can be so separated, so divisive. Like,
Yeah,
whether it should or shouldn't be, I mean, people need to find their community for sure.
for
So,
sure.
thank you so much for joining me. I am
Ooh.
so happy that you came on my show, talked all about your podcast, what you do, and I'm just so glad that we connected.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad too. And thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to take your podcast to the next level. Remember, podcasting is a journey and you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Let's connect. Be sure you follow me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production or visit espressopodcastproduction.com for more tips, resources, and behind-the-scenes insights. I'd love to hear about your podcasting journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more podcasters just like you find the show. Until next time, grab your coffee, keep creating, and I'll see you back here in the Podcast Cafe.